Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm going to try and post a little bit more on this area, I suppose. It's still going to all go on my YouTube channel, the main YouTube channel. But I'm going to try and post in RBG. Is it? Review Plus? Yeah, that's right. It's been so long since I did a video on here, or even did anything to do with this side, that I even forgot the actual anagram for it. So the other day I went and bought this shirt, the Joker and Harley Quinn. When it went through the till, it said something about Suicide Squad. I am not happy about that. Let's not talk about it. I feel like people are going to hate me for that. I'm not very good with hype, so people talking about Suicide Squad a lot is really pissing me off. Especially when this art clearly does not fit what is happening. He says that. I'm going to double check it now. Clearly does not fit the Suicide Squad and the way they look and stuff like that. This is not a Suicide Squad t-shirt to me. So it really frustrated me that this was going through till the Suicide Squad. We're going to completely skip that because we are not talking about Suicide Squad. We're not talking about Batman, but we are talking a little bit about DC being Green Arrow Year 1. I picked this up in May. I haven't read a graphic novel for a year. The last time I've got on my phone, I've got which is what I was just looking at. I looked at my phone to make sure I was getting my dates right. I update my phone with books and graphic novels as I read them, so I can remember which ones I've read in my drawer, which ones I haven't read, and which ones that I actually like. As I flick through, I can go, oh, I remember reading that. That was amazing. And I think it was the 28th of June 2015 was the last time I read a graphic novel. So it'd been a while. Not by choice, I hadn't got around to any. I don't know what the last one I read was, but it must have put me off reading another one for a while. Might have been too long or something, and it took me too long to read. So I just hadn't read one, and nothing really grabbed my fancy. And then I was speaking to a friend that I met while I was doing the stage experience audition, who absolutely loved the Arrow TV show, and she was like, "You should really watch the Arrow TV show. I do really want to get into it." And she wants to get into graphic novels, so I made a pile of graphic novels that I still haven't given her for her to read. And she was like, "I'd love to read a Arrow graphic novel." So I picked up an Arrow graphic novel, and when I picked it up, being year 1, I thought it'd be the best place to start for a start story to figure out who Green Arrow is. I watched the first few episodes of the Green Arrow TV show, so I had a good idea. But apart from that, I didn't really know anything about him. And when I bought it, the person in the comic book shop told me that it was such a good graphic novel to start off at, Green Arrow wise, and it really, really is. Things that frustrate me about characters sometimes, this isn't a knock on the graphic novel or the character or anything like that. He's a billionaire, entrepreneur or whatever, straight away. DC, billionaire. You straight away put the two together between him and Batman. You straight away go, oh, well, it's just another one of those things. And that's where the similarities end, which is so good. It goes from, billionaire is going to inherit the world and he's going to become this master superhero, but it sort of doesn't. It goes through a completely different transitional phase, which was actually really well done. I was really surprised by it, because I didn't know what to expect. As I said, I watched a couple of episodes of the Green Arrow TV show, but that was about it. I didn't really know anything about Green Arrow up until that point. So then, as I was reading his story, it was really interesting to read. I really didn't. The one thing that I don't know if this is like the proper origin story of like the original origin story of Green Arrow. I didn't like the fact that he bought this famous bow and arrow, and then he found it, just happened to find it on the beach. Things like that niggled me a little bit. I was like, this is a little bit too, oh, that's just perfect for this, for this situation. But it was still really interesting. It really gripped me. That was the one thing I will say about that. The thinner graphic novels I can read in one sitting pretty often. Sometimes I'll read them in a couple of sittings. That I powered through straight away. I think there's 5 or 6 issues. I've got my PS4 on. I think there's 5 or 6 issues. I'm just trying to find where it is. And I didn't stop once. 6 issues. 6 issues of year 1 that go all into this. I didn't stop once. Every time it came to an end, it was... And it's always the same with the comic book anyway. When it came to an end of one of the comics... it just made me want to read the next one. And it's always, like I say, it's always the same with a comic book. It's never really ended unless it had like a definitive ending. It's not really, a comic book doesn't really end without you wanting to read the next one. But I've always found like almost a logical stopping point when I've tried to read a graphic novel. Like, oh, I'll stop here, I'll eat something, and then I'll come back to it. Whereas for this one, I felt like there was, not saying it wasn't a logical end point, a stop point for me. I just didn't want to stop, which I found really positive about it. The story is really gripping. Like, it's almost the opposite. Like I was trying to say earlier, almost the opposite of the Batman story. Batman loses his parents. He's still a wealthy entrepreneur, billionaire. So he sort of builds himself up. So you see him go from low point to build himself up to the high point. The way, to me, the Green Arrow graphic novel starts, he's at the highest point of his life. Nothing could go any better for him, and he gets dragged down. So it's like the opposite. He gets dragged down to a really negative point. He doesn't know if he's going to be able to survive. He doesn't know if he's going to live. And you see him build himself back up and find himself in a way. So he was this billionaire entrepreneur man that everything was going well for. And now all of a sudden he's got to build himself up on an island that he gets shipwrecked. Well, he gets thrown overboard on, thrown overboard off his own yacht. I'm not going to try and throw too much spoiler in there, but it's a pretty well-known story. It's like trying not to explain the backstory of Batman while talking about the Batman story. So yeah, he gets thrown off a ship and marooned on an island for dead. And it just so happens he doesn't die. So it's about him building himself up, and that's what I mean. It's like the opposite. Instead of him starting negative and building up, he starts positive, goes to negative, and then builds himself up. And I found that like a really good way to tell a story, and it was a really interesting story to read. It was full of action as well, which I was really surprised about. The Batman Year One for me, it was still action packed, but it wasn't as action packed. Almost, it was like getting to know the characters of the story, whereas this, to me, you got to know Green Arrow because he was the main character, obviously, but because he's on a desert island, you're not really learning about anyone else, you're just focused on Green Arrow. And I found that really positive, because now, if I read another one, obviously I'm going to get introduced to all the characters, but I already know the main character, I already know his motives and everything like that, and I know everything about him. Not that other Year Ones haven't done that, but this one, it was like a primary focus instead of like being thrown in with everything else, as well as balancing it with the action. So I thought it was a really good one, really good balance for everything. That's the way I describe it. Really, it's a well balanced graphic novel. If you've never read a Green Arrow graphic novel, obviously, or any graphic novel that you can find the series of that starts with a Year One, always try and read the Year One, just to get a good idea of where it starts. I never did it with Batman because I knew the Batman backstory already. I started with The Killing Joke, which I never ever regretted. But things like Green Arrow, unless you like are really read up on the character or like know a lot about the character, it's always good to start with the Year One if it has a Year One, so you know the backstory of the character, so the next time you read it, you're like, oh, he's doing this because of this reason. And this really fills in his backstory and how he comes up with the idea of being Green Arrow. And how it changes basically his whole philosophy in life. It's really well drawn. Flicking through it again, I read this a couple of days ago, but just flicking through it again, like, some of the imagery is just amazing. I mean, that's the picture I posted the other day about the arrow to the knee, which did make me laugh a little bit. And I like the fact as well, like, there's a part of it that literally shows him creating an arrow that doesn't kill people. So the first thing I always thought, like, you always hear about superheroes not wanting to kill people and things like that, but arrows are tipped. Like, even if you get like a not fatal shot, it's still going to make them bleed and stuff. And it started to make me think, when I was watching the TV show, that is, but I stopped after a couple of episodes. It really made me think, like, how are they going to do this and try and make it so he's not a killer? Because that's what, so apart from the Punisher, there's not many superheroes that really kill their victims. And like, there's a whole bit in there. There's like a couple of panels, and it's really literally a couple of panels where he explains how he's going to do it without killing people. And when I saw that, I was like, that's actually really clever that they even fit that into his Year One. Like, so this is how I became a hero. This is how this is the person I am before, this is the person I am after, this is how I became the hero, and this is how I'm not going to kill people while I'm doing it. And for me, that was really interesting, actually. So I definitely recommend it. Green Arrow fan, not a Green Arrow fan. I think it's a really good graphic novel to keep you hooked and keep you going through the story of learning about him and learning his backstory as well as how he fights, which I think is really important for things like Year Ones, to see how they figure that out, how they develop the character and their own personal character into a fighting machine, almost. I really enjoyed the graphic novel, and I'm definitely going to pick up some more Green Arrows at some point. I hope you have enjoyed this little mini review sort of thing of that graphic novel. I don't want to get into too many details because it can ruin things for people, and I've been told off for that in the past. So I am just sort of like skirting around the edges, but I was pleasantly surprised by this graphic novel. Like I said, it was a friend that recommended it to me, and usually when I get a recommendation about something, I won't watch or read it, or I won't enjoy it as much. This really kept me reading it for, I think I read it in about 3-4 hours, and I just sat and I just flicked the whole way through. I'd stop every now and again to talk to people and things, but I just flicked the whole way through, and I absolutely adored it. So if you've never read anything by about Green Arrow, definitely start here and definitely carry on with that series. I hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully we will see you again at some point soon. If the record button would stop. Are you gonna do it this time? I tried to do it really smoothly, but clearly we're not in that phase yet, are we, camera? We're gonna get there, me and you. We're gonna get to that point where I can be smooth with you. Let's try again. I'll see you again in the next one.